Well, the books were initially collected by one woman, Dr. Ruth Baldwin, hence the name Baldwin Library of Historical Children's Literature. Dr. Baldwin began collecting the books in 1953 when she received a gift of 40 children's chapbooks as a birthday present. And she had inherited the collecting gene anyway. She loved to collect stuff. So collecting children's books really became the passion of her life. So beginning in 1953 and continuing until the mid-70s, she amassed approximately 35,000 19th century English language children's books, and most of them were British or American. And then in the mid-70s, she had them evaluated by an appraiser, and her house was just full of them. She kept them all in her house, and decided at that time that she would like to give them to a library. And she always saw her books as a cultural and social repository. She never collected the books as an investment. She wanted to give it to a library. She wanted the collection to stay together. She wanted it to be used for scholarly research. Dr. Joy Anderson was an English professor at the University of Florida who specialized in children's literature, and she was invited to give a talk at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, where Dr. Baldwin was a professor as well. Dr. Baldwin took Dr. Anderson to her house and showed her her collection of 35,000 19th century British and American children's books, and said that she was interested in finding a university that would like to take the collection and use it for academic research. Joy Anderson thought it was a fabulous collection and thought it would be a wonderful thing to have at the University of Florida. So she came back and she talked to the head of the English department and the head of the library. They flew out to Baton Rouge and had a look at the collection. And they agreed with Dr. Anderson that yes, that would be a wonderful thing to have at the University of Florida. So they made the offer to Dr. Baldwin. She accepted and came to the university in the late 1970s. She brought her collection here, and she served as curator of the collection as well. Once the collection was at the University of Florida, she decided to add 20th century material. So throughout the next 20 years, she continued to add to the collection, filling in gaps from the 19th century, as well as adding many 20th century books. One of the strengths of the Baldwin Library is that we have many editions of a single text, and so the researcher is able to study how that text changed over centuries even. And one example of this is Alice in Wonderland. We have about 250 different editions of Alice in Wonderland. We have many editions of Robinson Crusoe as well. And another title that we have many editions of is Aesop's Fables. And we have this because Aesop's Fables has always been something children read. Even before there were books specifically for children, there was Aesop's Fables. And they read it because they loved the wonderful pictures that were in it. And the parents liked it too because there were all those wonderful little morals that were stuck at the end of the stories. So Aesop's Fables has always been popular with children. And actually, one of our earliest books is an Aesop's Fables from 1668. So this is the title page of the Aesop's Fables from 1668. And this is an example of the illustrations that were in there, so you can understand how a child would have loved to pore over this book, which has all of these wonderful illustrations with animals, and would have enjoyed this material even in 1668. So one of the advantages, as I said earlier, is the many, many different editions of Aesop's Fables that you can look at in the Baldwin Library. And of course, Aesop's Fables continues to be stories that children enjoy. And here is a very recent edition of an Aesop's Fable that I'm sure the wonderful illustrations drew children in. And so we have Aesop's Fables from 1668 to 2010. Well, another really popular genre of children's literature is, of course, toy books, pop-ups and movables, things like that. And the Baldwin Library, again, has a wonderful collection of toy books, including flip books and fuzzy-wuzzy books and books that make noise. But probably the most popular part of the toy book genre are pop-up books. And we have a good number of them as well. One of the first pop-up books was Dean's New Scenic Books, and this is a version of Little Red Riding Hood. And it's quite simple, but I'm sure the children were thrilled with it. It's from the 1850s. And it was a small ribbon as you opened the book, and you could pull it up and it would show a scene in 3 dimensions. So this is one of the very earliest pop-up books from the 1850s. So this is really in good shape for being as old as it is, and you'll notice that the color is very vibrant, and that's a hand-colored illustration. So through the last 150 years, it's really stayed in pretty good shape. I doubt that too many children actually handled this book, because if they did, it probably wouldn't still be in this good of condition. So in the latter part of the 19th century, the Germans actually did a lot of really great work with movable books in particular. And the pop-up variety has sort of gone in and out of fashion. In the 1930s in the United States, there were a lot of pop-up books. And then they sort of went underground for a while. And of course, recently, there have been wonderful paper engineers working in this genre. And once again, the pop-up book is very popular. And of course, they're much more elaborate than those very early ones. This, for example, is a recent Alice in Wonderland that came out several years ago. So once again, the Baldwin has a wonderful selection of pop-up books to be looked at and studied from the 1850s through the current year. People always ask me, what's the oldest book you have? Well, here it is, and this book is from 1656. It's a catechism, The Grounds and Principles of Religion, contained in a shorter catechism. And this is what children recited to learn about the gospel and faith. So the first question in the catechism is, what is the chief end of man? And the answer is, man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. So the children were expected to learn that answer word for word, and the adult would ask the question and the child would give the answer.